She couldn't stop touching it, the rotting flesh, the smell that made her husband vomit into the kitchen sink, the thing she had paid for with lies, built with deception and maintained with denial until it nearly killed her. And when he left, when he couldn't stand the stench of what she'd become, she didn't mourn the relationship. She didn't cry over lost love. No, she bought a gun. She practiced her aim, and she waited outside his new life with murder in her heart and delusion in her mind. This is the story of how vanity becomes violence, how insecurity becomes obsession, how a woman destroyed everything, including herself, chasing an image that was never real to begin with. Welcome to Real Crime Stories Hub, where we don't just tell you what happened, we show you why it happened. We dive deep into the psychology, the pain, the choices that lead ordinary people to do unspeakable things. If you want stories that make you think, that make you feel, that show you the darkness humans are capable of when they lose themselves completely, then you're in the right place. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe because we've got stories that will keep you up at night, questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. Her name was Desiree Thompson, and if you asked anyone who knew her as a child, they'd tell you she was always looking for something, always searching, always incomplete. Born in Atlanta in 1989 to a single mother who worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, Desiree grew up in the kind of poverty that teaches you early. You don't matter unless you make yourself matter. Her father? Gone before she could remember his face. And her mother? Too exhausted to notice the little girl who stared at herself in every reflective surface, looking for proof she existed, proof she was worth something. She was 7 years old when she first understood what pretty meant. Really understood it. Her cousin Shanice came over for Thanksgiving, hair done in perfect braids, wearing a dress that sparkled under the fluorescent kitchen light. And everyone looked at Shanice, complimented her, touched her shoulders, smiled at her like she was something precious. Desiree stood in the corner in her Walmart jeans and her too small shirt, and she felt it for the first time. Invisible, not just unseen, but erased, like she was a ghost in her own family, watching life happen to people who mattered while she just existed. That feeling never left her. It grew roots. It became the voice in her head that whispered every single day, "You're not enough, not pretty enough, not special enough, not worth looking at." And Desiree? She listened to that voice like it was gospel. She internalized it, made it her truth. School was worse. Middle school, high school, those years when teenage girls are already vicious, already measuring each other against impossible standards. Desiree wasn't ugly, she wasn't. But she wasn't the girl who walked down the hallway and made boys turn their heads. She wasn't the girl who got asked to dances or invited to parties. She was average, forgettable. And in a world that worships beauty like a religion, average feels like a death sentence. She tried everything. Different hairstyles, makeup tutorials on YouTube, clothes she couldn't afford. Bought with money she earned babysitting and cleaning houses after school. She studied other girls like they were textbooks, analyzing what made them magnetic, what made them desirable. And the answer was always the same: body, curves, that specific shape that made men stare and women whisper with envy. By the time she was 16, Desiree had developed an eating disorder. Not the kind anyone noticed. She was too good at hiding it. But she counted every calorie, punished herself for every bite, exercised until her legs shook and her vision blurred. And still, her body didn't look like the girls in the magazines, the girls on Instagram, the girls who seemed to glide through life on the currency of their appearance. The pain of it consumed her, the unfairness, the randomness. Why was she born into this body? Why couldn't she be beautiful? Why did she have to fight so hard for something other women just had? It ate at her, made her bitter, made her desperate. She was 19 when she saw the video that changed everything. A before and after transformation on Instagram. Some beauty influencer showing off her Brazilian butt lift, her tiny waist and exaggerated curves, talking about how it changed her life, how men treated her differently, how opportunities opened up, how she finally felt beautiful, finally felt worthy, finally felt seen. Desiree watched that video 17 times in one sitting. She read every comment, clicked on every tag clinic, researched every doctor, and something crystallized in her mind, hard and sharp and absolute. This was the answer. This was what she needed. This surgery, this transformation, it wasn't vanity. It was survival. It was the key to unlocking the life she deserved, the attention she'd been denied her entire existence. From that moment on, the BBL became her obsession, her religion, her singular focus. She followed hundreds of accounts, joined Facebook groups, memorized terminology, learned about fat transfer, about recovery times, about the risks and the rewards. And in every photo she saw, in every testimonial she read, she saw her future self. Beautiful, desired, finally enough. But there was a problem: money. The surgery cost thousands, $10, $15, $20,000 depending on the surgeon. Money she didn't have. Money her part-time job at a retail store would never produce. Money that seemed impossibly out of reach. So she waited, and she fantasized, and she let that obsession burrow deeper into her psyche until it wasn't just a want. It was a need, a compulsion, the only thing that mattered. Enter Marcus Williams, 27 years old, military veteran, working as an electrician in Jacksonville, Florida, stable, responsible, the kind of man who paid his bills on time, called his mother every Sunday, and believed in doing things the right way. He met Desiree online in 2019, on one of those dating apps where people pretend to be looking for something real while secretly just trying to fill the emptiness inside themselves. Marcus was lonely, 2 years out of the Marines, adjusting to civilian life, watching his friends get married and start families while he came home to an empty apartment every night. He wanted partnership. He wanted stability. He wanted a woman he could build something with. Desiree, she wanted someone to save her, someone to make her feel valuable, someone to prove that she was worth loving, even if she didn't believe it herself. They talked for 3 months before they ever met in person. Long phone calls that stretched into the early morning hours, text messages throughout the day, video chats where they laughed and flirted and slowly convinced themselves they were falling in love. Marcus was charmed by her. She was sweet, attentive, said all the right things. She listened to his stories about deployment, about losing friends, about the nightmares he still had. She made him feel understood. What Marcus didn't see, what he couldn't see through a screen, was the desperation underneath. The way Desiree analyzed every word he said, calculated every response, played the role of perfect girlfriend because she needed him to commit, needed him to invest, needed him to be the solution to all her problems. When they finally met in person, Marcus drove 6 hours to Atlanta to see her. There was chemistry, physical attraction, enough genuine connection that Marcus convinced himself this was it. This was the woman he'd been waiting for. Within 3 months, he proposed. Within 6 months, they were married at a courthouse with 2 witnesses and a future that seemed bright with promise. The first year was the honeymoon phase. Marcus was attentive, generous, supportive. He sent her flowers at work, surprised her with weekend trips, told her constantly how lucky he felt to have found her. And Desiree? She played her part perfectly. Cooked his favorite meals, kept the apartment spotless, sent him sexy photos when he was at work, did everything she thought a wife was supposed to do. But underneath, the obsession never left. The BBL fantasy never faded. Every time she looked in the mirror, every time she saw other women with the body she wanted, the hunger grew stronger. She followed more accounts, watched more videos, imagined more scenarios where having that body would fix everything wrong with her life. She started dropping hints to Marcus, casual mentions of cosmetic procedures, comments about celebrities who'd had work done, fishing for his reaction, testing his openness. And every single time Marcus shot it down. Not harshly, he wasn't a cruel man, but firmly. He didn't believe in cosmetic surgery, thought it was vain, unnecessary, dangerous. Told her she was beautiful, just the way she was, that she didn't need to change anything. Those words, meant to be reassuring, felt like rejection to Desiree, like he didn't understand her pain, didn't see how much she was suffering inside her own skin. His love, his acceptance, his attraction to her as she was, none of it mattered. Because she didn't love herself. She didn't accept herself. And no amount of external validation could fill the void inside her. So she stopped asking, stopped mentioning it. But the obsession, it grew, festered, became a secret she carried like a tumor, expanding in the darkness of her mind. The cracks started small. A tattoo she got without telling him, some inspirational quote about transformation and self-love. Marcus was annoyed but let it go. Then it was the way she constantly needed validation, fishing for compliments, getting upset if he didn't immediately notice when she changed her hair or wore something new. Little tests of his attention, his devotion, his awareness of her. He started noticing how much time she spent on social media, hours scrolling through Instagram, comparing herself to strangers, coming to bed in a dark mood after seeing photos of women whose lives looked perfect. He tried to talk to her about it, suggest she take a break from the apps, focus on their real life instead of the manufactured lives of influencers. But she'd get defensive, accuse him of not understanding, tell him he didn't know what it was like to feel inadequate every single day. There were arguments, small ones at first, about money. Desiree was spending more than they could afford on clothes, makeup, things she thought would make her more attractive. About priorities. Marcus wanted to save for a house, build a future, while Desiree seemed focused only on the present, on appearance, on quick fixes to deep problems. And then there was the attention-seeking, the way she needed constant reassurance from him, but also from other men. She started posting more revealing photos online, started responding to DMs from random guys who complimented her. Nothing physical, she wasn't cheating, but emotional infidelity, testing her desirability, using other men's attention as a substitute for the self-esteem she couldn't generate internally. Marcus felt it slipping, felt her becoming someone he didn't recognize. But he loved her, believed in their vows, thought they could work through it if they just communicated better, tried harder, stayed committed. He had no idea how deep her obsession ran, no idea what was coming. It was her friend Tanisha who lit the fuse. Tanisha had gotten a BBL 6 months earlier, went to some clinic in Miami, came back with a body that looked like it had been photoshopped onto her frame. And suddenly Tanisha's life was different, better. Men approached her everywhere. Her Instagram following exploded. She started getting invited to events, getting free products from brands, living the life that Desiree had only dreamed about. They met for brunch one Sunday and Desiree couldn't take her eyes off Tanisha's body. The curves, the confidence, the way men at other tables stared. And Tanisha, sensing Desiree's envy, leaned in close and whispered, "Girl, you need to do this. It'll change your life. I know a doctor. He's not licensed here, but he's cheap and he's good. He works out of a private clinic, does everything for $10,000. Cash only. $10,000. Still a fortune, but possible. Maybe." If she could just figure out how to get the money without Marcus knowing, that conversation was the turning point. The moment fantasy became plan, became mission. Desiree went home that night and started scheming, started calculating, started building the lie that would destroy her marriage, her health, and eventually lead to attempted murder. She spent weeks researching, not legitimate surgeons. They were too expensive, too cautious, too likely to refuse her without proper medical clearance. She found the underground network, the doctors who'd lost their licenses or never had them, the clinics that operated in legal gray areas, the medical tourists who flew to other countries for cheap procedures and came back with complications that American hospitals had to fix. And she found her guy. Dr. Ramon, at least, that's what he called himself, operating out of a clinic that was really just a modified storefront in a strip mall outside Miami. No hospital privileges, no malpractice insurance, no oversight, but cheap. So cheap. $8,000 for the full procedure. Desiree had found her answer. Now she just needed to find the money. Marcus had been saving, not for surgery, for their future, a down payment on a house, money he'd carefully accumulated over 2 years, kept in a separate savings account, money he'd earned through overtime and side jobs and sacrifices. $15,000, their nest egg, their shot at stability. Desiree knew about that account, had access to it, technically, though Marcus had asked her not to touch it unless there was an emergency. And to Desiree, this was an emergency. This was life or death. This was her one chance at happiness, at feeling beautiful, at becoming the woman she was meant to be. So she started building her story, told Marcus she wanted to start a business, an online boutique selling clothes and accessories, said she'd found a mentor, another woman who'd successfully built a brand, who was willing to teach her the ropes. All she needed was startup capital, $10,000 for inventory, website design, marketing, an investment in their future, in her independence, in building something they could be proud of. Marcus was skeptical, asked questions, wanted to see a business plan, meet this mentor, understand the details. But Desiree was prepared. She'd created fake documents, fake emails, a whole constructed narrative that looked legitimate enough. She cried, told him she needed him to believe in her, to support her dreams, to trust that she could do this. And Marcus, who loved her, who wanted to see her happy, who believed in marriage as partnership, he said yes. She withdrew $10,000, told him she was flying to New York for a week-long business intensive, meetings with suppliers, building relationships with manufacturers, kissed him goodbye at the airport, promised she'd call every night. And then she flew to Miami, checked into a cheap motel, and prepared to mutilate her body in a back-alley clinic run by a man who barely qualified as a doctor. The lies came easily now. She texted Marcus photos of fake workshops, fake meetings, fake dinners with fake business contacts. She called him every night from her motel room, voice bright and excited, spinning elaborate fictions about all the progress she was making. And he believed her, every word. Because why wouldn't he? She was his wife, the woman he'd vowed to trust and cherish. She had no idea she was about to destroy them both. The clinic was worse than she'd imagined. Dirty tile floors, fluorescent lights that flickered, medical equipment that looked 20 years old, no nurses, no anesthesiologist, just Dr. Ramon and an assistant whose credentials were never mentioned. But Desiree didn't care, didn't let herself care, because turning back now meant staying in her inadequate body forever, and that wasn't an option. That was worse than any risk. The procedure itself was brutal. Local anesthesia instead of general. She was awake for the whole thing, felt the liposuction needle sucking fat from her abdomen and thighs, felt the injections as that fat was pushed into her buttocks. 4 hours on a table in unspeakable pain, crying and shaking while Dr. Ramon worked and told her to stop being dramatic. When it was over, she could barely walk. Her body was swollen, bruised, wrapped in compression garments that felt like they were crushing her organs. Dr. Ramon gave her a prescription for pain medication, instructions for aftercare, and a warning. No sitting directly on her buttocks for 6 weeks. No strenuous activity, watch for signs of infection. She went back to the motel and collapsed. Spent 3 days in bed, barely eating, popping pain pills like candy, telling Marcus over the phone that the business intensive was going great, just exhausting. So many late nights and early mornings. Her voice was strained, weak, but she blamed it on stress and excitement. On the 4th day, she noticed the smell. Faint at first, sour, wrong. She pulled up her compression garment and saw it. One of the injection sites was oozing, not clear fluid, thick, yellowish pus. The skin around it was red, hot to the touch. Infected. She called Dr. Ramon. He told her it was normal, just part of the healing process, to keep the area clean and take the antibiotics he'd prescribed. But he hadn't prescribed antibiotics, had forgotten or didn't care, or figured she'd just deal with whatever complications arose on her own. The infection spread. By day 6, she was running a fever. The smell was stronger now, unmistakable. That sick, sweet odor of necrotic tissue, of flesh dying inside her body. She was terrified but also trapped. Couldn't go to a real hospital without exposing the lie, without Marcus finding out what she'd done. So she tried to manage it herself. Bought antibiotics online from some shady pharmacy, cleaned the wounds with peroxide, changed her bandages constantly, and prayed that her body would heal before she had to go home. It didn't. By day 8, chunks of dead tissue were sloughing off. The smell made her gag when she changed her bandages. She could see exposed fat, maybe even muscle in the wounds. And she knew she was going to die if she didn't get real medical attention. But she got on the plane anyway. Flew home with her rotting body hidden under loose clothes, popped more pain medication, and prepared to lie to her husband's face while her flesh literally decomposed inside her. Marcus picked her up from the airport, tried to hug her. She pulled away, said she was sore from all the traveling, all the walking. He noticed she seemed off, pale, sweating even though the airport was air-conditioned, asked if she was feeling okay. She said she was just tired, just needed to rest. They got in the car, windows up, and that's when he smelled it. That smell, that unmistakable reek of infection and decay. He thought maybe it was something outside, some roadkill they'd passed. But it got stronger as they drove, followed them home, invaded their apartment the moment they walked through the door. He asked what the smell was. She said she didn't smell anything, blamed it on the garbage, said she'd take it out later. But that night in bed, with her body pressed close to his, he smelled it again. Stronger, worse, coming from her. He turned on the light, looked at her, really looked, saw the pallor of her skin, the sheen of fever sweat, the way she was breathing shallow and careful, like every movement hurt. And he asked her, point blank, what was wrong. She said nothing, said she was fine, said he was imagining things. He didn't believe her. Got up, followed his nose, and found her bag. Opened it, saw the bloody bandages she'd wrapped in plastic bags hidden at the bottom, saw the pill bottles, saw the compression garment. He confronted her. She broke down, tried to explain, tried to make him understand why she'd done it, why she'd lied, why she'd needed this so badly. But he wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at her body, at the oozing wounds, at the dead flesh she'd been hiding under her clothes. And he ran to the bathroom and vomited. That sound, her husband retching, unable to even look at her without feeling physically sick, broke something in Desiree. Some last fragile piece of her sanity just shattered. Marcus told her she needed to go to the hospital immediately. She refused, said they couldn't afford it, said she'd heal on her own, said it wasn't that bad. He told her she was insane, told her she'd use their savings for a backyard butcher job that was literally killing her, told her he couldn't believe she'd lied to him, betrayed him, risked her life for something so stupid, so vain. They screamed at each other for hours, until neighbors complained, until they were both exhausted, until Marcus finally said the words that ended their marriage. I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who cares more about how she looks than about our future, our trust, our life together. I want a divorce. He moved out the next day, filed papers the following week, and Desiree, infected and delirious and abandoned, finally went to the hospital, where doctors had to perform emergency surgery to remove the necrotic tissue, to save her life from the vanity that had nearly killed her. She survived, physically, but the surgeries to repair the damage left her scarred, disfigured. The BBL that was supposed to make her beautiful had instead left her with permanent marks, with asymmetry, with tissue that would never heal quite right. And the medical bills, $40,000 that insurance refused to cover because the initial surgery was cosmetic and illegal, bankrupted her. She lost the apartment, couldn't afford it alone. Moved in with Tanisha, the friend who'd recommended Dr. Ramon in the first place. But Tanisha didn't want to hear about the complications, the regrets, the pain. Tanisha's surgery had gone fine, and she was living her best life. She didn't have patience for Desiree's depression, her neediness, her constant crying and complaining. After 3 months, Tanisha kicked her out, told her she was bringing down the vibe, making everything negative, refusing to take responsibility for her own choices. And Desiree was homeless, sleeping in her car, showering at truck stops, working part-time at a fast food restaurant just to afford gas and food. She started drinking, started using pills, not just pain medication anymore, but anything that would numb the reality of what her life had become. Benzos, sleep aids, whatever she could steal or buy cheap from dealers who hung around the places desperate people gathered. And she started obsessing over Marcus, checking his social media constantly, creating fake accounts when he blocked her, driving past his apartment at night, watching his windows, wondering if he was inside, wondering if he was with someone else, wondering if he ever thought about her. The answer came 6 months after their divorce was finalized. Marcus posted a photo with a new woman. Her name was Jennifer. She was a nurse, pretty but not in an Instagram way, pretty in a natural, wholesome way that probably meant she didn't need surgery or filters or validation from strangers. They were at a restaurant, Marcus's arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling like they hadn't a care in the world. Desiree stared at that photo for hours, felt something crack inside her chest, felt rage and grief and jealousy all twist together into something dark and terrible. Because how dare he move on? How dare he be happy when she was suffering? How dare he find someone else, someone better, someone who didn't need fixing? That photo turned obsession into vendetta. She stopped sleeping. Spent entire nights scrolling through Marcus's social media, through Jennifer's social media, through the accounts of their mutual friends. Pieced together their relationship timeline. Figured out where they went on dates, what restaurants they liked, when they saw each other. She created multiple fake accounts, messaged him from them. First with apologies, sorry for everything, hoping they could be friends. When he didn't respond, the messages got angrier. Accusations that he'd given up on their marriage too easily, that he'd abandoned her when she needed him most, that he was a coward and a liar. He blocked every account, but she just made new ones. She started driving past his apartment, not just occasionally, multiple times a day. Memorized his schedule, knew when he left for work, when he came home, when Jennifer's car was parked in his spot. She told herself she just wanted to see him, to understand why he didn't love her anymore. But really she wanted him to suffer, wanted him to feel the pain she felt every single day. She sent him text messages from burner phones, threats disguised as pleas. You ruined my life. You'll regret leaving me. You'll see what it's like to lose everything. Messages that should have sent her to jail for harassment, but Marcus didn't report them. Didn't want the drama, didn't want to believe his ex-wife was actually dangerous. That was his mistake. She started showing up places she knew he'd be. The grocery store he shopped at, the gym he went to, following him like a ghost, staying just far enough away that he couldn't prove she was stalking him, but close enough that he felt watched, felt hunted. Jennifer noticed, started getting scared, told Marcus they should file a restraining order. But Marcus thought he could handle it, thought Desiree would eventually move on, find someone else to fixate on. He still remembered the woman he'd married, still had some sympathy for how much she was struggling. That sympathy almost got him killed. Marcus proposed to Jennifer on a Saturday afternoon in March, took her to the park where they'd had their first date, got down on one knee, slipped a ring on her finger, posted photos on Instagram with the caption, "She said yes, I'm the luckiest man alive." Desiree saw it within minutes, was scrolling through one of her fake accounts when the post appeared, saw the ring, saw Jennifer's face, radiant with joy, saw Marcus's smile, genuine and unguarded in a way he'd never smiled with her. Something inside her just detonated. She started screaming, in her car parked outside a convenience store, screaming until her throat was raw, pounding the steering wheel, sobbing so hard she thought she might vomit. Because this was it. This was the final proof that she'd lost, that she was worthless, that she'd destroyed everything and gotten nothing in return. She'd ruined her body for him, lied for him, lost everything for him, and he just replaced her, like she'd never mattered at all. The rage that filled her in that moment wasn't human anymore. It was primal, pure. It consumed every rational thought, every vestige of self-control. And in that rage, a singular thought crystallized. If she couldn't have him, if she couldn't be happy, then neither could he. She was going to kill Jennifer. And if Marcus got in the way, she'd kill him too. She bought the gun the next day, a 9mm handgun from a private seller who didn't ask questions, didn't run a background check, just took her cash and handed over the weapon with a box of ammunition. It was surprisingly easy, disturbingly easy. She drove to a shooting range 2 counties over, where no one knew her, practiced for hours, learned how to load the magazine, chamber around, aim, squeeze the trigger. The recoil startled her at first. The noise, the way the gun kicked in her hands. But she kept practicing, kept shooting until she could hit the target consistently. She told herself she was just preparing, just making sure she could defend herself if she needed to. But she knew the truth. She was planning murder, methodically, carefully, with the same obsessive focus she'd once applied to researching BBL surgeries. She started following them again. Not just Marcus, both of them. Learned Jennifer's schedule. Figured out when she left work, what route she drove home, where she parked. Found out that Jennifer worked night shifts twice a week at the hospital, got off at 11 p.m., walked to her car alone through a poorly lit parking garage. Perfect. Desiree spent a week rehearsing, driving to the hospital, parking in the garage, timing how long it would take to get from her car to Jennifer's, planning her escape route. She wore dark clothes, a hat pulled low, gloves so she wouldn't leave fingerprints. She wrote letters. Rants, really. Dozens of pages explaining why she had to do this, why it was Marcus's fault, why the world had been so unfair to her that she had no choice but to make them understand her pain. Letters she would never send, but that would be found after. That would explain to everyone why she'd been driven to this. The night came. A Tuesday in late March. Jennifer was scheduled for a night shift. Marcus would be home alone, asleep, unaware that his ex-wife was about to murder his fiancée. Desiree arrived at the hospital at 10:30, parked in a dark corner of the garage, gun loaded in her jacket pocket, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She waited, watched the elevator, watched for Jennifer's car, tried not to think about what she was about to do, because thinking meant hesitating, and hesitating meant losing her nerve. At 11:15, Jennifer emerged from the elevator, scrubs, tennis shoes, purse over her shoulder, keys in hand, tired, vulnerable, alone. Desiree got out of her car, started walking toward her. Jennifer didn't notice at first, was looking at her phone, texting someone, probably Marcus, probably telling him she was heading home. Desiree called out, "Jennifer?" Jennifer looked up, confused. Didn't recognize her immediately in the dim light. "Yes? I need to talk to you about Marcus." And that's when Jennifer saw the gun. That's when recognition and terror flooded her face simultaneously. That's when she started backing away, hands up, saying, wait, please." But Desiree wasn't there to talk. She raised the gun, aimed, pulled the trigger. The first shot missed. Jennifer screamed, started running. Desiree chased her, fired again. This shot hit Jennifer's shoulder, spun her around, sent her crashing to the concrete. She was still screaming, crying, begging for her life. Desiree stood over her, looked down at this woman who'd taken everything from her. This woman who was beautiful and kind and normal in all the ways Desiree could never be. And she pulled the trigger 3 more times. 2 bullets hit Jennifer's chest. 1 hit her neck. Blood pooled on the concrete, spreading fast, too fast. Desiree stood there, gun smoking in her hand, Jennifer's body twitching and gasping, and she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. Just the hollow realization that this hadn't fixed anything, hadn't made her feel any better, hadn't filled the void inside her. Somewhere above, a door opened. Someone shouted, "Call 911!" Desiree looked up, saw faces in windows, saw people on phones, saw security guards running toward her, and she just stood there. Didn't run, didn't resist, just dropped the gun and sank to her knees in Jennifer's blood. The police arrived in minutes, found Desiree still kneeling beside Jennifer's body, covered in blood, rocking back and forth and muttering, I had to. He needed to understand." They arrested her on the spot, read her Miranda rights while paramedics rushed to Jennifer, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to save her life. At the station, Desiree confessed immediately. Didn't ask for a lawyer. Just talked, and talked. Poured out the entire story, the BBL, the deception, the divorce, the obsession, the planning. Showed them the fake social media accounts she'd created. the photos she'd taken while stalking Marcus, the letters she'd written explaining her reasoning. Detectives pulled her phone records, found hundreds of harassing messages to Marcus over the past 6 months, threats, accusations, promises of revenge, found searches for how to shoot accurately and can you survive a chest wound, and how long does it take to die from gunshot. They pulled surveillance footage from the hospital garage. Crystal clear video of Desiree approaching Jennifer, drawing the gun, firing repeatedly while Jennifer tried to run. No ambiguity, no question of self-defense or accident, just cold-blooded attempted murder, recorded in high definition. They interviewed Marcus, interviewed Jennifer's family and co-workers, built a timeline of Desiree's escalating behavior, her deteriorating mental state, her fixation that had morphed from obsession to homicidal rage. Jennifer survived, barely. She coded twice in the ambulance, went through 6 hours of emergency surgery to repair her lung, her shoulder, her jugular vein, lost so much blood that doctors told her family to prepare for the worst. But she lived. Woke up 3 days later in ICU, intubated and bandaged and in unspeakable pain, but alive. Marcus was at her bedside, had been there the entire time, crying, praying, blaming himself for not taking the threat seriously, for not getting a restraining order, for not protecting the woman he loved. Jennifer's recovery took months, physical therapy, trauma therapy, nightmares every night, panic attacks every time she heard a loud noise. The knowledge that she'd almost died, that someone had hated her enough to shoot her multiple times, haunted her in ways that physical scars never could. But she and Marcus stayed together. Got married the following year in a small ceremony, surrounded by family who'd almost lost her. They moved out of state, started over somewhere Desiree's ghost couldn't reach them, built a life defined by survival,